Welcome again to the 16th Annual Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity. My name is Sun Jie, professor at Ewha Women's University. I am again your MC for this very special session. This plenary session, too, is held under the theme of the Korea-Soviet Summit and Jeju Island of World Peace. It marks a very special relationship between the Jeju Forum and the former Soviet Union and the island Jeju itself. But I will leave all of that to former Ambassador Kim Suk, who will be moderating this very interesting and important session. Please give him a round. Please give everyone a warm round of applause. And now I would like to officially convey the mic over to Ambassador Kim. Ambassador Kim?
Thank you, Professor Son. This session is being delayed even before it began, so my apology. Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to the plenary session to commemorate 30th anniversary of Korea-Soviet Summit held in Jeju Island. And my thanks to many dignitaries for participating here. I'm especially delighted to see former foreign ministers, Foreign Minister Yu Myung-hwan here, and other foreign ministers and ambassadors accredited to Korea and foreign dignitaries. The Korea-Soviet Summit meeting in 1991 was actually the third of its kind during 1990 and 91. But actually, to the eyes of Korean people, it was the culmination of Korea-Soviet diplomatic relations, because the previous two ones were held outside Korea, one in San Francisco and the other one in Moscow. And that was the first event or occasion that Soviet leader ever put his feet on Korean soil. So everybody was very excited. And that summit meeting set a very good example for the following summit meetings with such countries like China, Japan, and the United States. But more significantly, that very summit meeting raised the hope that the Cold War could end and durable peace could be built on the Korean Peninsula. This also provided a momentum about designating Jeju Island as the island of world peace. It realized, it took several more years to realize. Now, as we reflect on the significance of the Korea-Soviet Summit meeting, I hope we can explore in our session the way forward and the possibility of expanding the role of Jeju for the peace in East Asia and beyond. And before we begin, I'd like to invite the Honorable Choi Nam-soo, Chairman of Jeju Special Self-Governing Provincial Council, for congratulatory remarks. Choi Nam-soo 의장님. Choi Nam-soo. Moderator, I would like to propose to take off your mask because we are all old enough to get inoculation of a vaccine, and we have enough of social distancing. So for the purpose of expression, you may take masks. Thank you very much, Professor.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Former Korean ambassador to United Nations, Kim Suk, and former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Kong Ro-myung, and distinguished speakers and participants joining us both online and offline, and the people of Jeju who are supporting this Jeju Forum. Nice to meet you all. I am the chairman of Jeju Special Self-Governing Provincial Council. In 1991 spring, all over Jeju, we could see the flag of Korea and Soviet Union. We have different ideologies, and we have the divided continent. And the leaders of the two countries have met on this island, and 30 years have passed, but still I can remember that moment. It was such a historic moment for the leaders of Korea and Soviet Union to meet, and that was made possible thanks to efforts by various people. Especially we have the former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Kong Ro-myung, and he was one of the first diplomat dispatched to Soviet Union, and he made a lot of efforts to make the summit possible. I want to extend my gratitude by taking this occasion. At that time, nobody could anticipate, but we had the successful ROK Soviet Union summit, and a few months later, we had the peaceful ending of the Cold War and the dismantlement of the Soviet Union. And I believe that the same thing can happen for the peace of the Korean Peninsula. I think that Jeju can make some contribution for that. With the Korea-Soviet Union summit, the island of Jeju embarked on being the island of peace. In May 1995, at an international summit held in the US, we had the Professor Go Sung-jun, who is here also with us. He made a presentation about designating Jeju as an island of peace. And their presentations, as well as efforts by many leaders, made it possible for Jeju to be designated as the island of peace. So the effort of the people of Jeju and many people made Jeju to be designated as the island of peace in July 2005. So this year marks 16th year since its designation. So by commemorating the 16th year as the island of world peace, Jeju is designing some second phase plans to reinforce its role as the island of world peace. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the Korea-Soviet Union summit, and also the 30th year of the ending of the Cold War. I wish the Jeju Forum to continue to advance to strengthen its position as the leading forum of Asia Pacific. I want to ask you to join us in this path toward peace and prosperity. Thank you.
감사합니다, 전함수 의장님.
Thank you.
Let me invite our very special guest, Kong Ro-myung, former Foreign Minister of Korea. He is one of the senior most diplomat in Korea and well respected in foreign affairs. And he was there in Moscow when the Soviet Union dissolved. So he was the only Korean ambassador to Soviet Union and the first Korean ambassador to Russian Republic. And he has a very special perspective and a wisdom for us. And I invite him to share his recollection with us. And he will make his remarks while seated. 불편하셨어요?
올해가 제주 한소 정상회담 30주년이 되고 또 오늘이 6.25 사변 발발 기념일이 됨에 따라서 이 자리에서 말씀드리는 저의 감회가 대단히 깊습니다. 30년 전 4월 21일 노태우 대통령과 골바초프 대통령은 이곳 제주에서 제3차 한소 정상회담을 가졌습니다. 그 자리에서 두 정상은 세계를 변화시키고 있는 화해와 개방의 새로운 질서가 한반도에서도 이루어지도록 함께 노력할 것을 합의했던 것입니다. 새로운
The new order, was referring to the fall of the Berlin Wall that took place November in the previous year. In retrospect, 30 years after the occasion, the Korea-Soviet summit could be just one page of the history. In particular, the leader of Soviet Union, one pillar of Cold War, visited Korea, a small southern island, sitting together with the Korean president. It was a great news indeed. Just before me, Chairperson Ja Nam-soo said that 800 journalists from home and abroad came to cover the event, and they reported the news to the world. Actually, the summit was really a focus of the attention of the world. The significance of the summit will be covered by other experts, but I will tell you a story as a person who was directly involved in the summit. Gorbachev's Japanese visit was planned. Our government, my government, knew that. So we asked the Soviet Union for the Gorbachev to drop by Korea in his way to Japan. However, initially, Soviet Union refused because they do not have enough time to visit. But we insisted on his visit. Then we responded that they have internal situation, so they might cancel the Secretary General's visit to Japan. But we didn't back off. So we said, if that is the case, then rather than coming to Seoul, why didn't you come to Jeju in a casual way, just a 2 days visit? So as a result of that insisting, Gorbachev visited Jeju. When they say internal story, internal situation, it went like this. 4 months before the summit, December previous year, Gorbachev was locked in the small village in Sochi. It was kind of kind of a punitive measure. At that time, I was the ambassador to Soviet, but I received the order from Korea to come to Jeju to receive President Gorbachev. On April 20th, Gorbachev finished their visit to Japan, and he was about to land in Jeju 5 p.m. However, their schedule was behind, so they actually 8 hours were delayed. The reason for the delay was that the President Gorbachev paid the tribute to the tomb of Russian Navy, the sailors. In Nagasaki, there was a Russian cemetery. The Russian cemetery held the bodies of the Russian sailors who were killed in Russia-Japan war in the past. At that time, we Korean representatives watched the NHK broadcasting, and then we went off to the airport to receive him. In about 15 minutes of our waiting, we spotted a Soviet plane coming from the southern sky. It was very emotional and very impressive moment in my memory. The Soviet entourage came, check in the hotel, and the dinner was opened. Actually, the dinner was opened after midnight. It was unprecedented in the Korean diplomatic history. At that time, President Gorbachev was accompanied by wife Raisa. So my wife guided Madame Liza and the Jeju village, and Madame Liza asked my wife to visit a small alley. It was unplanned, so my wife was a little bit embarrassed. But into the alley, the Madame Liza asked to pull off the car and visited a small store, and my wife was very concerned because she didn't know what would be happening in the small store, but the store was very clean and well arranged. Madame Liza bought a couple of items like shoes as a present for her granddaughter, and now I assume that the Madame Liza saw the big street of Jeju Island, but she was wondering what would be like in the back street. And at that time, I told my wife that the Jeju Island has per capita income was above $20,000 compared to the $7,500 per capita income in the mainland. So the store was clean. It's just natural. President Gorbachev and Madame Liza went to the same university, which is Moscow University. Gorbachev born in 1931, and they fell in love with each other in Moscow. And I was told from the Soviet friends, the President Gorbachev, actually General Secretary Gorbachev was the only president who graduated from the university. I was in Moscow for 2 years from 1990 to 1991. The President Gorbachev was very popular among the Soviet intellectuals, but that was not the case with the workers' class. Actually, workers preferred Yeltsin to intelligent Gorbachev. So I asked the reason to the drivers in the embassy, and they said Yeltsin is really Russian man. And Yeltsin overdrank on board in his way to Germany, but still the Russian people loved Yeltsin as a Russian man. President Roh was passionate about northern diplomacy. Into 5 months after his inauguration, he made a statement, announced 7.7 declaration. It was a presidential declaration for the people's pride and unification and prosperity. It has 6 points of agreement. The first one is inter-Korean people's free exchanges and the free travel by Korean expats and separated families status confirmation. And thirdly, there is a door opening for inter-Korean trade, and trade should be allowed for non-military items. And the refraining from inter-Korean confrontation was another point. And lastly, the Korea should support DPRK to improve its relations with the United States and Japan. In the history of diplomacy, there was a June 23rd declaration of 1973 by President Park Chung-hee. It opened the doors of diplomatic relations to the non-communist states. However, Korea was not able to open relations with the communist bloc. 25 years later, from 623 declaration in 1988, the Olympic Games were held in Seoul, Korea, and East and West world met in Seoul. With that opportunity, the Korean government was able to make a policy shift with both Korea's recognition in the international world and the simultaneous accession to the United Nations. With the June 23 declaration, actually Korea wanted to make a policy transformation to catch up with the international changes. At that time, African 20 new states joined together. At that time, 3 Scandinavian countries approved the existence of North Korea. So South Korea should not sit idle. That's why the June 23rd declaration was made. But still, it was challenging to open a relationship with the communist country. 10 years after the June 23rd declaration in 1973, then Foreign Affairs Minister Lee Bum-seok made the speech in National Defense University. He said, "Our diplomatic challenge is to implement a northern policy to establish ties with the USSR and Communist China." At that time, it was the very first time that the northern policy was mentioned by the government official. At that time, I was assistant to the minister, and that speech was prepared by the Blue House. At that time, the presidential secretary, Mr. Woo Byung-gyu, and Secretary Lee Jang-chun led the writing of the speech script, and it also helped by the Professor Han Seung-ju and other smart brains. So establishing diplomatic ties with the Soviet Union and China was our task ahead of us. And during the Roh Tae-woo administration, Minister Park Cheol-won, who was the policy advisor to Blue House, was asked to visit Moscow several times. And in this process, President Roh's letter was delivered to Soviet Union. I know that when the Pak Choram visit in 1998, and also in December same year, Dr. Gyeoru Kim's return to Korea, and on March 22nd, 1990, when Kim Yong-sam visited Soviet Union, the President No took advantage of all these visits to deliver his letters to the Soviet Union. And when I was in Moscow in the official posting in 1990, President No gave me the letter of appointment in person, and he asked me to bring him to Moscow. It was the proof that he had a strong intention to establish relationship with the Soviet Union. After the first Korea-Soviet summit meeting in 1990, it was first time the Soviet Union was our the dialogue partner. But before that, we had the Korean War involving Soviet Union, and the Korean civil plane was shot by the Soviet Soviet Air Force. But there was no apology in this occasion. So we mentioned this issue in the summit meeting. And at that time, the Soviet prime minister said that Soviet government and people will regret that the incident of Korean airline crash. Technically, he said it was a self-defense action. But it should be viewed as in humanitarian perspective. And after that, in the third summit meeting, the Soviet Union made a similar comments. In closing, the both presidents met 4 times after the war. The previous 3 times were attended by the incumbent president, and fourth summit was taking place in this island Jeju after the 2 presidents left their official position, and I was called by President No and accompanied with the summit in Jeju. There is a word that the landscape remained unchanged, but people have gone. And Gorbachev is still very healthy, and he was able to visit Jeju again. However, Madame Liza passed away in 1999. Now the President No is now ill. I hope miracle works for him. This concludes my statement. Thank you.
Thank you for your great presentation. He is a former Minister for Foreign Affairs, and his age is over 90. So he has the vivid experience of what happened back then. Thank you very much for your remarks.
We have 3 professors for presentation. 제 옆에 우선
On the left to me, we have Moon Jang-in, who is the chairman of Sejong Institute. I believe you must all know him already. And we also have Ko Sung-jun, who is a professor of Jeju National University. He is also the president of the Institute for Korean Peninsula Unification.
Professor Sergei Radchenko of Cardiff joining virtually. from United Kingdom. Now, is Professor Radchenko with us? Are you ready? Okay, then go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ambassador Kim, Chairman Jua, and Minister Gong. I'm delighted to participate even virtually and to follow such a remarkable line of speakers on this very important topic. I'm a historian, a Cold War historian. I have written about Mikhail Gorbachev, and in my very brief remarks, I will provide the context for his trip to Jeju in 1991. A lot of people think about Gorbachev in relation to things that happened in Europe, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the reunification of Germany, summit in Reykjavik with Ronald Reagan. In many ways, though, Gorbachev's contribution to peace and the end of the Cold War in Asia were just as great, perhaps even greater. In fact, some of his most lasting legacies are there in Asia. The starting point for this was 1986, his speech in Vladivostok in July 1986, where he reached out to Asia, reached out to China. In fact, Gorbachev was central to the process of Sino-Soviet rapprochement that brought China and the Soviet Union back together after several decades of confrontation. I think his role has to be emphasized there. Gorbachev also worked very hard at bringing China and India together. He was trying to mediate between them and to help them overcome their confrontation with limited results. But it is perhaps in relation to Korea where he achieved a remarkable breakthrough. Now, the summit in Jeju took place some 30 years ago. It was a very remarkable summit. Korea was a country that suffered perhaps the most during the Cold War, arguably the most, because of the Korean War, because of the long process of division on the Korean Peninsula that was so costly for the Korean people. So it is all the more remarkable then that we had that moment in 1991 where a Soviet leader was able to meet with the president of South Korea after many, many years of Soviet non-recognition of South Korea, and talk business and talk engagement and dialogue. Now, Soviet turn towards South Korea took several years, and it was a result of the following factors. First of all, Mikhail Gorbachev was frustrated with Kim Il-sung of North Korea, increasingly frustrated with Kim Il-sung's conservative approach and his inability to understand ideas like new thinking, his inability to overcome the Cold War. The Seoul Olympics, of course, were an important breakthrough for the relationship. I remember at that time I was a child in 1988 when the Olympic happened, but I was living in the Soviet Union on the island of Sakhalin, where there were actually a very large Korean population. And I remember that window into South Korea that was brought into Soviet living rooms by a TV, by Olympics. So that was a very, very important turning point as well. Now, South Korea at that time, of course, was rapidly democratizing, and that in itself meant something for the Soviet Union, which was also undergoing the process of reforms. But I would like to just stress the vision that President Roh Tae-woo had at that moment, which I think is very important. If we think about two sides moving towards one another in the late 1980s, actually, it was Roh Tae-woo that walked most of the way towards the Soviet Union, and Gorbachev simply really extended his hand. You have to really appreciate the vision that the South Korean president had at that time. His policy of Nordpolitik towards the Soviet Union was very important. Their meeting in San Francisco was extremely important in 1990. And of course, then the Soviet Union and South Korea established their relationship, and South Korea actually became an important source of investment for the Soviet Union, an important source of credits for a country that was really falling apart at that point. In conclusion, it was really a remarkable achievement for Roh Tae-woo, who helped through his policy of Nordpolitik to bridge the gap between Korea and the Soviet bloc. As for Gorbachev, it was really a triumph of common sense for him, because improvement of relations with South Korea was, first of all, badly overdue. Secondly, was clearly in Moscow's interest. And thirdly, it had a lasting position for Russia, lasting legacy rather for Russia's position in East Asia, where it still enjoys a very constructive relationship with South Korea. Now, thanks very much again, and I look forward to meeting later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Radchenko, for your very professional analysis for spanning 30 years. Among your comments, it's quite interesting that at the time, President Gorbachev was quite frustrated by Kim Il-sung. Hearing from you, I was wondering whether the current Russian leader feels the similar way to the current North Korean leader. Now let's move on to 다음번 문정인
We will
말씀을 들어보겠습니다.
Now we will go on to the Professor Moon Jung-in. He is an architect of the Jeju Forum, and he was the initiator of 평화 peace process in Korea. And he left his big foot in the Korean diplomatic history. I will speak in Korean. I'm very emotional and impressive to be back in Jeju. And Minister Kong No-myung's explanation gave me great backdrop. At that time, 30 years ago, I was a professor in an American university. 4 a.m. in the morning, I received a call from Jeju. It was a call made by the chief editor Song Sang-in of Jeju Daily. And he told me that the Gorbachev and Notew would meet in Jeju, and I was asked to write a contribution for his newspaper. So I was thinking that the Gorbachev's visit to Korea will be overcoming the wall of Cold War. And so Gorbachev is the leader of the strongest power in the communist bloc. So Jeju will be a new monument where the West and East were meeting. With that momentum, I think that the Jeju Island will be given a new international profile. So with the Gorbachev's visit to Jeju, I propose to make the Jeju Island as a piece of island. At the time, I was envisioning that the Jeju did not have thief, did not have beggar, and did not have doors. There's no thief, that means there's no threat in this island. There is no beggar, that means there is no exploitation. If there is no door, then the community is secure and safe. So if there is no threat nor exploitation, and the community is open and trusted, we can see that that is the image of peace. So that is the essence of the Jeju's Sammu spirit. So based on that, we can signify peace in this island. And this island went through and suffering of the Jeju 4-3 incident. 4-3 incident is the tragedy from the Cold War. So overcoming the 4-3 is important. So Jeju would be one tool to overcome the tragedy. And by extension, I hope I can make Jeju Island as another Geneva. So if Cold War ends and the leaders from the West and East are traveling, then actually such an exchange was never happening in Korea. So Soviet, China, and the Eastern Bloc's leaders are come to Jeju and meeting with our leaders. So if that happens in Jeju, then the Jeju will become an international peace center. So I made that proposal, and I wrote the column with that content, and Jeju Daily put my column on the front page. So this course actually started from there. After Gorbachev's return, and Shingu-bum, the governor of Jeju, was interested in my idea, and Kim Gyu-bum, he was a member of Jeju Council, and he came forward to establish rule. So in 1994, the rule was established to make the Jeju Island as a peace island. And when the Ugomin became a governor, just like 2000 Inter-Korean Summit, he proposed to set up the Jeju Forum in 2004. So I helped the governor Wu and designed the Jeju Forum in 2001. At that time, Jeju situation was not very friendly. So our plan was to hold the forum biannually. And in the Jeju Forum, President Kim Dae-jung came down to here. At that time, the doors and DPRK and U.S. relations went sour, so nothing was happened internationally. Our Jeju Forum was held in February, and it became the first anniversarial event for the Inter-Korean Summit. So President Kim Dae-jung delivered meaningful messages, and international press appeared in Jeju. And William Perry, the United States Secretary, and the President, many presidents, and Im Dong-won, the Minister of Unification, made the second Jeju Peace Forum significant. At that time, William Perry said the Korean situation is very difficult, so the biannual meeting would not be proper. So, as Ko Chung-seok, President Ko Chung-seok was there, so the forum became a semi-year forum. In 2005, there was another opportunity that was in the Nomuyan administration. I got a position for the Northeast Asian Forum. So we envisioned Korea should be the peace hub for Northeast Asia. But mainland will be busy with other business. So we picked Jeju Island to be the center of Peace Forum. So a lot of international convention and conferences could be proceeded, and a lot of peace movement and events could be held in Jeju. That was our idea. At that time, Mr. Ban Ki-moon was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he was also part of our process. And President Roh Tae-woo made an announcement that Jeju was a piece of island to the world, and Jeju Research Institute was opened in that regard. And Ambassador Kwon Young-min, who is now late, recommended by Minister Ban, came here to serve as the acting president of the Jeju Research Institute. So in retrospect, the Gorbachev's visit to Jeju was not just normal summit visit, but it was a momentum to overcome the obstacle of Cold War and to make Jeju as a peace hub in international community. So the establishing ties with the Soviet Union could be a meaning, but the Jeju found its position as a peace hub there. And in Jeju was announced as international free city by President Kim Dae-jung. And in that announcement, there was intention to announce the Jeju as a peace island of the world. And later, President Nomuhyun officialized the announcement. Jeju population is 600,000. In Korea, there are other forums like the DMZ Forum and Pyeongchang, Pyeonghwa forums in Gangwon-do area. I myself is involved in those forums, and also there is a Hwanghae forum in Chungcheong-do area. And in Busan, there is a Pan East Sea Forum. I was involved in those forums as well. Compared to other forums, I believe Jeju Forum is the most prominent one. We took a great achievement so far, but we have still long way to go in the future. So we need your support in this room. So Jeju, in order to make Jeju as a peace hub, we need creative ideas or policy ideas. In order to do so, the research institute should be working properly. Maybe Mr. Ban would remember. Initially, Mr. Kim Sung-han was the head of planning of the research institute. Initially, we tried to build the Jeju Research Institute as Oslo Institute or other world-renowned institute. But at the moment, Jeju Research Institute is not as big as those world-class institute. That's regrettable. And exhibition events are planned, but those exhibitions are not very facilitated or activated. And education-wise, actually, 43 Peace Foundation working very well for a foundation. But the research institute should also take the role for education, but all the activities are not living up to my expectation. But one important thing is that in 1991, there was a great momentum, and the inertia was created from the momentum to get here. We have long way to go, and Jeju people, Jeju community should be at the center of this movement. I hope that Jeju should be the center of Northeast Asia peace. Thank you. He revisited the historic implication of Jeju Island, and in the beginning, he mentioned Sammu spirits. He said the Sammu spirit could be the foundation for Jeju to be the symbol of peace in the world. That was a great idea. Thank you.
교수님의
Now we will invite Professor Ko for his remarks. Thank you, Ambassador Kim Suk, for the introduction. So it was so insightful to listen to the remarks of the former Minister Kong and also Professor Moon Jung-in. And I could revisit what happened 30 years ago. At the time, I was studying at Teju University, and I heard a lot about the ROK USSR summit. About 2 months ago, the secretariat for the Jeju Forum contacted me to make some comments about how Korea and Jeju was designated as the peace island. So the request was to revisit what happened 30 years ago and during the 30 years ago. So we are living in a time where we have to do so many things in a hurry, and we tend to forget what happened in the past. And revisiting the ROK USSR summit and to look back on the implication and to go back to the birth of the island of peace. Well, I thought that it would be so meaningful and can contribute to the future of Jeju. So as I'm sitting here, so many thoughts are coming back to me. So what I was asked to comment was what happened before and after the summit that allowed Jeju to be designated as the peace island. So it will be the story about Jeju Island. And as Ambassador Kim said, well, the First, I think we need to think about how this idea of designating Jeju as the peace island came about and what kind of efforts were made, especially by President Moon here, was made to make it possible. So in 1991, April 20, we had the Korea USSR summit, but even before that summit, in the post-Cold War, for the post-Cold War era and in the new economic regime and in the Pan-Pacific world, Teju, I think, acknowledged the fact that it cannot just keep with the existing way of doing. So that was being discussed among the people of Jeju. So the scholars and researchers who are from Jeju, like Chairman Moon and myself and all the other great figures, have been discussing about the future path that Jeju has to take for the constructive future. So since 1990, we have formed a small group to make some contribution to the future of Jeju, and that is what is now being called the Jeju International Council. And as the ROK-USSR summit was announced, and as the chairman wrote some articles to the Jeju newspaper, we always had the meeting between the scholars and researchers of Jeju to find the right way for the island. And this summit of April 1991 was announced, and we sure knew that it can contribute to the peace of the Korean Peninsula and the region. So when the summit was announced, and after holding this summit in June the same year, we had the Jeju International Council, and we discussed about what we need to do in this transitional period and what would be the future path for Jeju. So the ROK-USSR summit was like an opportunity for us. And Professor Moon here said that we should develop Jeju as an island of peace. So the founding seminar of Jeju International Council discussed about the order of the geopolitical region surrounding Jeju, and we discussed about designating Jeju as the island of peace. So it was like 2 months after the summit. So the people of Jeju all had the expectations for the brighter future of the island, and this idea of designating it as the island of peace was so welcomed. Many discussants and speakers and participants thought that this is like such a great idea. We had participants from Seoul and even abroad, some visiting researchers. They were joining us in that discussion. So they all agree that the Peace Island is such a revolutionary idea, but we need to have more detailed discussion. That was agreed. So we all knew that this path toward the Peace Island was agreed, and we just discussed that we must talk about in more detail. So we thought that maybe we should form some kind of a local campaign to promote that idea. And on the following year, on the second year of the Jeju International Council in June 1992, we discussed how to achieve peace and prosperity, and that was discussed at the academic conference held in line with the International Council of Jeju. So great figures from Russia, the US, and China, they all came to this academic conference to make presentations and have discussions. So it was covered in the international media, and that served as a momentum. And we have Chairman Yang here, and well, we garnered a lot of interest from the media and the people of the island and community. So we thought that we are starting to see something concrete. So in 1991 and 92, within the community of Jeju, we created a consensus that we need to create the island of peace. And since 1994, we had great visitors. In 1994, we had Premier Li Feng of China visiting Jeju. And in 1995, from Vietnam, the leader Do Moi had a visit to Jeju, and also Jiang Zemin of China also visited Jeju. And we also had the Korea-US and Korea-Japan summits held in Jeju on following years. Especially the leaders of the socialism countries paid a visit to Jeju, and not just from socialist countries, but also from the democratic countries. We had leaders visiting Jeju for summit. So within Korea and in the region, Jeju was starting to be acknowledged as the venue for peaceful discourse. So we had that kind of consensus being formed to make it possible. In 1998, the Jeju Development Council, which is like a think tank under the city of Jeju, and also the Jeju East Asia Research Institute, started to do some studies on the future design of Jeju Island as the island of peace, and what kind of plans are needed to make it possible. So those researches and reports and discussions were followed. And as Chairman Moon just mentioned, in 2000, the central government had announced the Special Development Act for Jeju. So even before that enactment, Jeju made preparations for its future, and there were some discussions between the local government and the central government. So in 2000, Jeju was designated as a special development zone, and in that law, in that act, there were articles about designating it as the island of peace. Since 1999, Jeju started to provide humanitarian aid to the PRK for the first time as a local government. Well, Jeju has many difficulties. Its tax revenue is not sufficient. It's far from the 38th parallel, but still, it was the first local government to provide the humanitarian aid to the PRK. It was not recommended by the central government. It was not due to the request from the central government, but it was done voluntarily. So the PRK welcomed this aid, and that continued. Some of you might remember, since we had the 2000, we had the summit not just the summit of the leaders, but also the ministerial meeting and secretarial meeting. Those meetings between Korea and the PRK were held in Jeju. So we started this aid with the movement of sending tangerine from Teju to the PRK, but it was so welcomed and so appreciated that it led to great outcomes. Some media said that this is the vitamin C diplomacy because tangerine is full of vitamin C. So those are also in line with the effort to become the island of peace, like humanitarian aid to DPRK. And as Chairman Moon said, we had the Jeju Forum being hosted in Jeju. So all the peace-related projects were successfully held in Jeju Island. There were successful policies, meaningful policies being implemented, and President Kim Dae-jung and President Roh Moo-hyun during their terms, well, they paid visits to the Jeju Forum in person, and their presence showed the central government's interest in making Jeju a peace island. And the people of Jeju actively presented the blueprint to be the island of peace. In 2004, Jeju Island aggregated opinions from various sectors of the world, and in July, it submitted the application to the central government to be designated as the island of peace. So it contained action plans, what it's going to do when it's assigned as the island of peace, and it passed the national screening committee. So on the following year, it was officially designated as the island of peace. So during that process, the effort of Chairman Moon here was so important. So looking back, 30 years have passed and 15 years have passed since the Island of Peace designation. So we had changes in the administration, and also the governor of Jeju have been changed over and over. We had different political beliefs, but still everybody had the same consistent belief that it is important to keep Jeju as the island of peace. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. So we heard from 3 panelists. Well, it was not our fault, but we are over the scheduled time. So before I wrap up, I just want to visit Professor Moon Jung-in.
Whenever governor is elected, their commitments and pledges are different. However, one thing in common among different governors is that their devotion to making Jeju committed to peace. Governor Shin Gu-man, he was officially appointed, was very interested in the peace discourse. So he was initiator of peace discourse. Governor Woo Gun-min implemented those vision into practice. So he began a Jeju Forum. And February 22nd, 2005, when Jeju was announced as the island of world peace, at that time the Governor Lee was in office. Governor Kim was the leading role in proceeding with the 28 peace-related projects. And the Governor Won was the main figure to internationalize the Jeju Forum. As a person from mainland, I myself can say that all the different governors made a great contribution to make Jeju as a peace island. Let's give them another big round of applause. As a wrap-up,
Well, we look back into the past 30 years. So 30 years ago, the whole world was full of hope. We had the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the Eastern Bloc was liberalized, and the young people were talking about this song, Wind of Change, of from a German group. So people talk about the peace dividend, and they talked about peace dividend full of hope about the end of the Korean War, and that made the Korea and Soviet Union diplomatic ties, and we had the joint access to the UN by the North and the South. So if we come back to the present, what is happening on the peninsula, this is the only land on Earth where we still have the Cold War remaining, and the DPRK is still developing nuclear weapons. And with the rise of China, we are having new changes in the international politics. We are having confrontation between the two powers of the world. So we can never be complacent with our current reality. Our hopes and dreams of past 30 years are not accomplished yet, but we cannot just give up. So today's session, I think, is very meaningful in urging us to revisit those dreams and hopes and goals. And the Jeju Research Institute, the Jeju Peace Institute, I am sure will further grow into a global institute that devotes itself to the world peace. And that's a wrap for the session. Thank you.
Kim and everyone taking us back 30 years. I actually remember I was reporting for the New York Times and covered the summit. And then, of course, with the CNN, covered the opening of the Jeju Forum as well. Before we go, I'd like to show you the visual panel that our visual thinker has created about this session that we just saw. It think it will serve as a memory to all those that follow about the very important topic and the recollections and the memories that were shared here today. This virtual content will be created for this session, and then of course in the afternoon the diplomatic sessions as well. We are sorry to keep you from your lunch, but we are going to now break for lunch, and I hope you have a great session in the afternoon. That's it for me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Jeju Forum. Thank you very much.